Into chapter 8, we begin to define what communicative competence really is, as opposed to just a linguistic competence or grammatical competence where you know about a language and you can talk about it or manipulate the grammar. But we want people to really be able to use that language, kind of function in the language, which we're going to call a communicative competence, the ability to really use the actual language. We have a term BICS, which is BICS, which is basic interpersonal communicative skills, which describes the ability to actually use the language for conversations and in real life, versus CALP, C-A-L-P, which is the cognitive academic language proficiency, which is more what language you might use just to study the language in the classroom, or talk about the language in an ESL classroom. So we can separate BICS versus CALP like as one of the distinctions there. Talked about in the classroom, there's no real context, as much context for the language. You're kind of out of context, out of the real world. You're in a classroom. And so certain people would be able to study the language in the classroom, but once they're in the real world, then in the context of the real language, then they might feel, in that case, more lost. We talked about grammatical competence. We also have discourse competence. And discourse is an interesting term because discourse could be described as conversational competence. But discourse can also be just me persuading you, complaining about something, expressing my ideas. So discourse is thought of as like a back and forth type of language, but can also be just giving a presentation, but me trying to use logic, or in this case, persuade or convince. And then we also have the sociolinguistic competence, and that means that you understand the culture, and you know what's polite, what's not polite, and you know how to actually function in the culture so that you can enter that society and use the language, in the proper way. And the strategic competence, that's the ability to function without having a perfect ability in the language, but you're able to still use it, still get around, order things, meet people. And you have this kind of strategy of using body language, and you don't mind asking people for help with the language, and are going around what you're trying to say, like with other words that you can handle. And this whole kind of good language learner description that we've also talked about as well. So there's different kinds of competence, but mainly our goal is this communicative competence where the person can actually use the language. Language is actually functioning. You're functioning. You're buying things, you're meeting people, you're returning things, making friends, small talk, asking questions, and all of that could be described as functioning. In fact, you could organize a course by functions. You could say, today we will learn how to buy something in a store. And tomorrow we'll learn how to express your disappointment with something, as opposed to organizing the curriculum just by grammar lessons, for example, like today's the present tense, next week we'll do, nouns, or even organizing a course by topic, or could possibly be described as a notion. Most English courses, if you notice, each week we'll have a topic. Like this week will be the sports topic, and next week we'll talk about food, and then we'll talk about extreme sports or something. But which I think works fine. But a course could be organized by function, so that we have our topic, so to speak, is returning things at the store or introducing yourself to someone, and that would be a valid way really to organize a whole course, since we know that functioning is mainly what we do, what we're doing with the language. There's different ways to describe functions. Sometimes it's just something like getting something done, or getting questions answered, meeting people, using language to learn new things, using language to be creative and tell stories. And so different ways to describe all that we can actually do with functions. And this can make its way into the classroom, in a very practical way. And apologizing, describing people, giving commands, commanding people, giving instructions, showing someone, how to cook something. So this can actually find an application in terms of how to put the course together.